Hi there, Miss Angela with RitaRicks.com. Thank you for joining our vlog series. To check out the blog, please go to RitaRicks.com. Now today we're going to talk about overcoming the fear of failure. It's a pretty big topic, and so many of us don't realize that we actually have a bigger fear of failing than actually succeeding, right? Almost seems a little twisted and a little crazy, but there's a bigger fear of failing that stops us from actually doing, trying, and committing to something new. Now, I want you to take a moment and I want you to think about when you were a kid. Think about those things that you really attempted to try to do. Maybe it was riding your bike without training wheels. It might have been skating. It could have been trying out for a sports team. Maybe it was soccer, or kickball, or football. Or maybe like me, it was a relay on the track team. And maybe with all those attempts and with trying those things, you failed a couple times, right? Maybe you fell off your bike. I know I did a lot of times, but maybe you fell off your bike. And then there was that fear of getting back on it. I want you to take yourself now and rewind yourself to however far up you want to go. And I want you to think about, as an adult, those things that you try that maybe you failed at. It could have been trying to cook a gourmet meal for your spouse and maybe you burnt it, or you use salt instead of sugar in something. Done that a time or two. Maybe you have applied for a job, then made it through interview 1, interview 2, and you think you are a shoo-in for the position, but you don't get the job. So you think about those fears of failures that we had, the thought of failing, the attempt of failing, and actually failing when we were kids, and how that has moved itself to our adulthood now, into the things that we are afraid of failing and messing up on and not doing right now. It just starts to cripple you. Now, the fear of failure is called atychiphobia. Now, y'all, I had to look that one up, but atychiphobia, it is the immense fear of failing, okay? And we understand that with trying to overcome this fear of failure can be a little difficult. Nobody said it was always going to be easy, right? But you have to realize that if the fear of failure cripples you from moving forward, achieving your dreams, getting your goals done, then you're stuck. And we talked about last month, about just getting ourselves unstuck, right? But don't let the fear of failure keep you stuck. So I've got a few tips to help you figure out how to get yourself out of the fear of failure. We want to overcome this fear. Now, my first one is I want you to identify where the fear comes from in the first place. Where does it come from? Typically, it actually comes from a limiting belief. Now, that limiting belief could have come from a past failure, right? You messing up one time before, and somewhere in your mind, you're thinking you should have never did it in the first place. You knew you were going to fail, right? Maybe that limiting belief comes from someone else that was like, a woman should never be a manager over a whole group of men. Why would you even think you could get that position, right? It's someone belittling your thought and where you think you can go and what you think you can try. So it makes you be fearful of trying again or trying in the first place because of a limiting belief. So I want you to identify where the fear comes from. And if it's a limiting belief, get rid of it. If it's your track record, recognize that you've made a few mistakes, but how many wins have you maybe had? Right? So I want you to identify where the fear comes from. Get rid of it, right? Or if you can't get rid of it, just identify, okay, that came from a space from when I was younger and I failed a lot. But you know what? I'm an adult now and I really want to try again. Or you know what? I just want to try again. I just want to give it a shot, right? Overcome that fear and identify where that fear comes from. Next, I want you to change the way you see failure. I kind of said it before where it's like, okay, well, how many wins have I actually had before? Right? Yes, we all are going to have failures. There's nothing said that we would not fail at some things. Not everything is meant to be, right? So I want you to change the way you see the failure. Recognize that maybe it's not failure and it just simply wasn't for you, right? You know, in the faith, we often say, you know what, God must not have meant that for me, right? It's a true statement. God might not have meant it for you. It might not be a failure at all, but it wasn't your time. It wasn't your place. It wasn't the way it was supposed to be this time. You got to overcome that fear and realize maybe it just wasn't for me then. Maybe it's for me now. Give it a shot, okay? The next one is, I want you to look at fear in another way also. Look at it more like personal reviews. Okay, now we've all been on Amazon, and I always go straight to the reviews. I look at what's been really, really good and done well, and I look at what like those 1 stars are. You know, I wish there could be 0 stars and I could really see what people are talking about. But looking at the 5 stars as well as the 1 star. And we know when we've ordered from Amazon, if you're like me, I did quite a bit of Amazon shopping, especially during this pandemic. And sometimes things would come broken. Sometimes they would come the wrong size. Sometimes it would be the completely wrong item altogether, and I have no idea what it is, right? So we understand that sometimes those things happen. We write a review about it. It wasn't that it was the worst and most god-awful thing in the world, but it wasn't what was right. It didn't fit. It wasn't the right size. It wasn't what I thought I was ordering. It wasn't what I thought I was going to get myself into. So I want you to not see it as a failure, but more just like a review. There's a lot of things that will have input, right? There's some things that you might want to add. You might want to try a little bit different. And that maybe it's just that you had to try it a little bit of a different way. But because of the attempts you've had, the reviews you've made on the attempts you've had, maybe you'll be able to make a better decision, a better choice, and look at it a little bit differently so that you maybe won't fail the next time. Okay, so realize it's not failure, just a couple of personal reviews. Now, the next one I love. It is amazing grace. Come on now. Give yourself some. Give yourself some grace. It's okay. I need you to be open to failing, right? I know that sounds like such a weird thing, but I need you to be open to losing sometimes. Sometimes in that loss, there's some real gain that happens. The other part, what I think is interesting is if you think about when you were riding that bike and maybe you fell, scraped up your elbows and knees. I'm telling you, I'm still bruised to this day. But at some point, you actually were like, you know what? It hurts when I fall. Let me figure out what I'm doing wrong so that I can do it right this time, next time. But give yourself the grace that I've got to be open to try. I've got to reach out as far as I can. And for me, one of the best statements is, what's the best that could happen? Yes, you could fail again, but what's the best that could happen? You could not only succeed, but you could succeed beyond your wildest dreams. So I want you to give yourself some grace, be open to failing, and it'll be okay. And the final one, which I think is the one that works probably the best for me, is allow the fear of failure to light a little bit of fire under your butt. Allow it to be your motivation and become fearless. Okay? Become fearless. I want you to be able to walk in situations where just because you're a little scared that you are going to fail, just because you're a little fearful, just a little bit, it's enough to fuel you into getting the job done, doing it right, double checking yourself, maybe a little bit of that pressure to kind of make you just sit a certain way, stand a certain way, command the attention differently than maybe you did before. So I want you to allow that fear to just put a little bit of fire under your butt to motivate you to be fearless. The only thing, what would they say, that you have to fear is fear itself. And I'll tell you that I'm not even scared of that because I'm open to the fear of failing. Because I'm telling you, what's the best that could happen? You could achieve your wildest dreams. So don't be scared. Don't be scared. We got no time for this fear. This fear is holding us back. And I don't want you to be held back anymore. So I do hope these tips were helpful. Remember, you're going to identify where the fear comes from. Figure it out. Where does it come from? Change the way you see failure. Recognize that it's not failure, but just a couple of personal reviews. Give yourself some of that amazing grace. Please give yourself the grace. And finally, allow the fear of failure to be a little fire under your butt so that you can be motivated to be fearless. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this vlog. Like I said, check out our vlog and amazing things at RitaRicks.com. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.